Please join me in Gasho. Namanobs, 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 Namanobs.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Dana Day service. As per the handout that was attached to today's Zoom meeting, Dana Day is a word used in Old India. The Chinese took the meaning and translated it into a Chinese word, fuse, which we use in Japan today. The meaning is offering. For Buddhists, we have the right mind first. Then we will be able to do the real offering. At the Second World Buddhist Women's Convention in New York in 1965, the following resolution was passed unanimously. We, the Fujinkai Federation, set up Dana Day on the second Sunday in February every year. The offertory will be donated to social welfare. And at the fourth convention in Japan in 1970, the following amendment was passed. We can hold a Dana Day service on a day convenient for each federation or chapter. Lady Takeko Kujo and Dana. Lady Takeko Kujo is Otani Kosho Zen Monshu's aunt. She devoted her whole life to people who suffered most. When the big earthquake hit the Tokyo area, Lady Takeko rushed to the site and helped as many people as she could. She made the foundation for establishing the Asoka Hospital in Tokyo. She wrote many poems and became very famous. The money she earned from publishing her books was donated to social welfare. She died on February 7th, 1928, at the age of 42. She is known as the mother of Dana.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeannie. We will now proceed on with the service, and I'm going to bring up, first of all, oops. What am I bringing up here? That's not what I want to bring up. Sorry about that. Let me just bring that up again. Okay. So we're going to start off. Let me just move this out of the way here. We're going to start off by reading the homages and three treasures. So you should be able to see it on your screen there if you don't have it printed out. Homage. Hard it is to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult it is to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we are hearing them. If we do not gain emancipation in the present life, we may not be free from sorrow in the ocean of births and deaths. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures. We go to the Buddha for guidance. May we always walk in the way that leads to enlightenment. Together, we go to the Buddha for guidance. May we always walk in the way that leads to enlightenment. We go to the Dharma for guidance. May we be submerged in the depth of the teachings and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. Together, we go to the Dharma for guidance. May we be submerged in the depth of the teachings and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. We go to the Sangha for guidance. May we all with one accord live the life of harmony in the spirit of oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Together, we go to the Sangha for guidance. May we all with one accord live the life of harmony in the spirit of oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriads of kalpas, hard it is to hear such excellent and profound teachings. Now we are able to hear and receive them. Let us try to understand the Tathagata's teachings. Thank you. Now, let's see. I think Robert's Akunev has some red marks scribbled on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what it is.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. So we will continue on with the Sambujo, followed by the chanting of the Sambutsuge. And if you have it with you, you can chant, join in the chant. Otherwise, just look at the screen.
You have your book.
Namandops, 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 namandops.
Namanda.
What will happen?
Namandops. Please join me in reading this English translation. We respectfully welcome Amida Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome Shakyamuni Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome the Buddhas of all times and places to our temple as we scatter our flowers with joy. Okay, I'm going to just try something. Sorry. No mandalas. There we go, that's better. Oh 日がまに守護縁よ開始図音べ有脈樹木如来予言調整無理小学内容おるじも開門生じ三昧知恵意徳無量修上下無人大善念小仏崩壊愚人人の空語外体無明欲ぬ世尊読む人の死死人徳無量空軍五大知恵寿命光明一層神道大戦願が差仏在所可動生じ未不下脱不世上位海に生じ如世三昧知恵以上五世徳仏無行志願一切具具一切内や決し有仏百千の熊無量大小修行五者供養一切使徒諸仏無尿具道天上無逆異尿五者諸仏世界無我け無種節道光明師匠変死諸国如世生じ一人難量量が差仏国土第一五種奇妙道場調節国如内容二無道祖我道愛見道達一切実法来生新熱上場伊藤が国寺具安の五仏神妙税が心象大津がの日力上上欲自母性 som 지혜 무게 조려 시성 지가 신경 계려 신시 조그 도그주 가교 조지 Please join me as we read the English translation of the Sambutsuge. Sambutsuge translation, Praises of the Buddha. Your face shines in great splendor, boundless wondrous dignity, such the greatness of your light, beyond all comparison. Brightness of the sun and moon and the shining money jewels, when compared to your brilliance, seem to us like blackest ink. Tathagata's countenance transcends all comparison. The great voice of awakening resounds through the 10 quarters. Your precepts, learning, effort, meditation, wisdom are virtues beyond all compare, ultimate, supreme, and rare. Your deep meditation has fathomed all the Dharma sea to the limits and the depth of all things the Buddhists teach. Ignorance, anger, and greed, the world-honored one has none. Like a lion among men, measureless your great virtues. Vast are your great virtuous deeds, your deep wisdom is profound. Your radiant, luminous light shakes all the world's foundations. When I become a Buddha equal to the Dharma King, I will transcend birth and death, liberating all beings. Giving discipline, precepts, patience, and effort, meditation and wisdom shall be supreme, unsurpassed. When I attain Buddhahood, everywhere fulfill my vow, bringing peace and tranquility to all beings in doubt and fear. Though there are myriad Buddhas, beyond measure, beyond count, and great sages numberless, like the grains of Ganges sand, I will honor each of them equally, accepting none. Even more importantly, I will seek the supreme way. Even though all Buddha worlds are countless as Ganges sands, even though all lands and realms are boundless without measure, yet my light shall reach them all and illumine every place. Such shall be my perfect work, such my power infinite. When I attain Buddhahood, my land will be first and best, place of practice transcendent, its people sublime and rare. My land is like nirvana, beyond all comparison. In my sincere compassion, I will enlighten all beings. All who come from 10 quarters to be born into my land will be pure, filled with gladness, peace, and great tranquility. O Buddhas of the 10 quarters, this is my true revelation. In this way, I've made my vows, and I will strive to fulfill them. Buddhas of the 10 quarters, with your wisdom unimpeded, may I always call on you to reveal my intentions. Though my body undergoes so much pain and suffering, I will persevere and strive patiently without regret. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Okay. So this morning, we've gathered here for this Dana Day service. Jeannie's already given my Dharma talk, so I don't think I need to say anything further. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you very much, Jeannie, for that wonderful introduction at the beginning, explaining a little bit about the Dana Day. I would like to actually do something today. I'm going to do something that they do in movies nowadays quite well. It's called a multi-universe, is it? Where I'm going to give 2 different timelines and bring them all together at the end. But I'm going to start off by reading a passage, and as soon as I find the passage. So I'm going to read a passage to begin my Dharma talk. It is human sentiment to rejoice in good and hate evil. If we do not reflect and despise evil, there will never be a time when we are saved from evil. We must promote good. However, no one should take pride in their own good. On the contrary, if we are not brought to tears for our own evils by the evils of others, we may also be unaware that the fires of evil are always burning within our own selves. Those unable to reflect on their own evil are apt to be proud of their petty good deeds. From the standpoint of companions on the path to enlightenment, the good and the evil person alike are intimate friends of seekers after truth. Rather than just affirming good itself by also acknowledging evil, we cannot fail to reflect deeply within ourselves. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. This is a pretty complicated passage, and it actually comes from Lady Takeko Kujo, who Jeannie had mentioned at the beginning of the service today. I actually found this passage, interestingly enough. There's an article that was actually written by Alfred Bloom. Some of you are probably familiar with Dr. Bloom. Dr. Alfred Bloom was one of the leading scholars of Jodo Shinshu in the West. He was lived in Hawaii for many years. Alfred Bloom actually, as a young man, went to Japan as a missionary, and he ended up converting over to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, and had written many texts on Jodo Shinshu. But when I was looking up material for today's talk, I found this article written by him, Kujo Takeko, A Modern Buddhist Woman. And it's an article, you could actually Google it up on Google. Kujo Takeko, you could Google. Her last name is spelled Kujo, and then Takeko, Takeko. And Alfred Bloom is the professor who wrote about her. He did this fairly short article, but explaining Kujo Takeko's life. And just to summarize, she was born in 1887 as the 6th child, the youngest of 6 children, to then Myonyo Shonin, the Gomonshi at that time. Kazuko Otani was his secular name. and her mother was Fujiko Otani. Now, her oldest brother, Otani Kozu, is very well known within Jodo Shinshu. Otani Kozu became the 22nd Monshu or Lord Abbot, the head of our organization. But he is well known because he led a couple of expeditions to the Silk Road, and Silk Roads from India through Afghanistan to China. And during those expeditions, they came up with many Buddhist artifacts that have kept the records of Buddhism and how it was transmitted from India through China. But Kujo Takeko, so in 1907, she helped her sister-in-law, Kazuko Otani, who was the wife of Kosui, the Monshu at that time. They formed the Buddhist Women's Federation. So this is 1907 when it was first formed in Japan. And in 1909, she was married to Yoshimasa Kujo. And after spending, her husband was about to embark to go study in England for a 10-year period. So after they got married, she went with him to England for just over a year, but she came back to Japan. And when her husband finally does come back from England, Europe, they lived in what is now known as the Honganji, Tsukiji Honganji, the very famous temple in Tokyo. But in 1914, her sister-in-law, Kazuko, passes away. So Kazuko was the wife of Otani Kozui. Actually, I was going to share this with you. Let me just pull this up again. I have here. Okay, so this is Otani Kozui. Wait. Can you all see this on your screen? Yeah, okay. So this is Otani Kozui, who was the 22nd Gomonshu. Right now, we have the 25th Gomonshu, Senyo Shonin. He came here when we had the 750th memorial for Shinai Shonin. But Otani Kozui was the 22nd Gomonshu. And his wife is over down here. This is Kazuko Otani. Okay? So his wife, Kozui and Kazuko Otani, in 1907, Kazuko with Kujo Takeko, they formed the Women's Federation. But Kazuko actually passes away at a young age, 1914. And after she passed away, Kujo Takeko becomes the head of the Fujinkai in Japan. Now, initially, the Fujinkai, their role in Japan, they had two primary roles. One was to help protect the temple, if you will. They helped in many functions throughout the temple. And the other main function was they offered relief to soldiers who were coming back at that time from the Sino-Japanese War and the Russian War. This was after World War I. And so they would offer relief to either families of soldiers who passed away or also to the ailing soldiers as well. So that was one of the early functions of the Fujinkai. So in 1919, following Kazuko's dream, Takeko Kujo actually founds the all-women's high school, basing its curriculum on Buddhist principles and ideals. And actually, my mother actually attended that high school when she was younger. Okay. Now, Kujo Takeko was known to be quite a prolific writer in poems, and it was through those poems or through writing several books that she was able to raise funds to help out with her next large initiative. So let's see, where was it now? So in 1920, in 1920, Kujo Takeko and her husband, this is when they moved into the Tsukiji Honganji in Tokyo. Tsukiji Honganji Temple is that very ornate temple right beside the Tsukiji Fish Market. Many of you who had gone to Japan have probably gone to that temple before. It doesn't look anything like a traditional Japanese temple. It actually is based on a structure from the Silk Roads that Otani Kozui, Takeko's brother here, he had brought back this idea of building a very modern temple. And so that's how this came about. And so her, Kujo Takeko and her husband moved into this Tsukiji Honganji in 1920. However, in 1923, we have the major earthquake that hit Tokyo. It's the largest earthquake in modern history in the Tokyo area. And at that time, there was immense devastation throughout the city. And it was then that Takeko Kujo began the Tokyo Shinshu Women's Auxiliary and became the head of what we call the Asoka Hospital. This is in 1924. And it's there, actually, that the Fujinkai, the Women's Auxiliary, became very active, and women from temples throughout the Eastern District of Japan, as well as other areas, came to volunteer to help at this hospital. Amongst those ladies, there was one young lady, I guess, by the name of Mino Fukushima, who is actually my grandmother. And it was in her voluntary work at that hospital that she was introduced to my grandfather, Shinjo Ikuta's older brother, who happened to be a doctor and was working out in the Kanto area. And so through that introduction, it came about that my grandfather, Shinjo Ikuta, and my grandmother got together. But anyways, and Kujo Takeko, unfortunately, at a very young age of 42 in 1928, she passes away. And it was said that she passed away from a blood disorder that was probably caused by the overwork that she did in helping relieve the people of that period. So this is one timeline that I wanted to introduce to you, the life of Lady Kujo Takeko, or Takeko Kujo. But at the same time, interestingly enough, and I wanted to just introduce this couple to you, a completely different couple. On the left, you have the person by the name of Arnold Petzel. And on the right, you have a picture of a person by the name of Bruno Petzel. Okay. If this name sounds familiar to some of you, it's because Hanka, she was what we call a true bohemian, in the sense that she was an artist who traveled through many places throughout Europe and Asia, and she was actually an opera singer. And she was doing a trip through, I think it was China at the time, when she was invited to go to Japan by the emperor to conduct a series of concerts. And so Hanka goes in 1905. So remember the time that Kujo Takeko was alive. And so it's around the same time, Hanka goes to Japan to give a series of concerts. And it's there that she falls in love with Japan and decides she wants to live here. So in 1910, her husband Bruno joins her with their son. and their son is Arnold Petzel, who was the architect who designed our temple. Okay? Now, Bruno, Hanka's husband, became a very devout follower of Buddhism. In fact, he becomes a professor of he actually becomes a professor of German, and he ends up translating a lot of, particularly what we call a Tendai school Buddhism, into German. And so Bruno eventually receives the honorary title of Daiichi. Oh no, wait, what was it? He receives the honorary title of Daisozu, or high priest in the Tendai school of Buddhism. So this Bruno and Hanka live in Japan together with their son Arnold, and they lived there actually for many years. In fact, they are there through World War II. And because of Bruno's interest in Buddhism, he acquires many Buddhist artifacts. And actually, here's a picture of, Arnold. It's kind of grainy. This is out of our history book. This is Arnold Petzel, who was the architect of our temple. But one of the artifacts that they had was, in fact, if you can see behind me now, is this statue of this Kannon Bodhisattva, which is the Bodhisattva of Compassion. I wonder if maybe I can move this a little closer. Okay. So this is the Bodhisattva of Compassion. This is one version of it. The Kannon is commonly referred to in the Chinese school as Guanyin or Kuan-yin, and in Japanese as Kannon or Kanzeon Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva of Compassion is a Bodhisattva who hears the crying voice of suffering and is determined to save all beings. Now, what's interesting about this particular statue, so during World War II, the Petzels, who lived in Tokyo, actually had to move to a more rural part of Japan, Karuizawa. But before they moved to Karuizawa, they had this statue because they were afraid that in their absence that this statue might be stolen or damaged. So they actually buried this statue in their backyard of their house. And it was only after World War II that they went back and they unburied it. And this statue was donated to the temple when, after Arnold's wife passed away, it was gifted to the temple. So we have it here now. But Arnold, because of his background in Japan, after World War II, what Arnold ended up doing was go to Germany, where he received his architecture degree, and he meets his wife there, and they come back, and they actually live in Japan for a period of time, but eventually they end up here in Vancouver. And so in 1962, when our temple on this place was being built, a committee was formed to figure out how to build the temple. And it was then that Arnold came into the mix of being the architect for a temple. But in the introduction to the service today, Jeannie mentions about how the Fujinkai, or the World's Women's Association, at the first or the second international gathering, they came up with the resolution to hold this annual Dana Day in February. And even though that was officially done in 1965, we know that the activities of Dana or Fujinkai existed much earlier. And in fact, when we look at the history of our own Fujinkai here in Steveston, it was originally started as what was known as the Oyoriko, which is the founding body of the Steveston Buddhist Temple Fujinkai. And it actually started at the inception of the temple in 1928. And it became officially a Fujinkai in 1932. Now, throughout the many years that the Fujinkai existed, their primary function was to support the many temple activities, to help out when there were functions going on at the temple. But they held a very important role throughout our history. One of the major roles that they did was to support one another in times of tragedy. So we know Steveston, with the history of the fishing village, there were many incidents of tragedies of fishermen passing away, etc. And it was during such difficult times that the community would rally and gather together, and the Fujinkai was a very important aspect of this. They would gather together at the temple. They would make the meals that we would share with one another, share in the sorrow with one another. But it is also not just cooking that they were instrumental in. I am personally grateful to the Fujinkai because it was actually in 1960, I believe it was. I have to look that up. Around 1960, what happened? Oh no, it must have been later. Maybe 1970 might be. But the Fujinkai actually they were interested in building the temple manse, and so originally the temple manse was to be built behind the temple. So we have the dog park behind our temple now, the Steveston Park behind the temple. Originally, the temple ground was a long, narrow strip. So it was up to the end of the Steveston Park and behind the temple. But when the Fujinkai proposed to build the manse, this is when the city proposed to have a land swap. So instead of a long, narrow piece, they actually provided the piece leading up from Gary Street to Fentiman. So it became more of a square lot instead of a long, narrow lot. So it was thanks to the Fujinkai that we were able to get that property along Fentiman because of their proposal. And so in 1977, after many fundraisers, the Fujinkai they were responsible for building the temple manse. Interestingly enough, the price at that time was $23,000. Okay, so can you imagine trying to build something for $23,000 today? But throughout the years, the Fujinkai have been responsible not only for supporting our temple, but also through their activities, they have been giving dana, or fuse, as Jeannie had mentioned, to the general community at large. And so we see in our activities, most locally, Fujinkai have been longtime supporters of the Richmond General Hospital, providing annual funds for their foundation. I know annually it may not amount to much, but over the many years that Fujinkai have been supporting it, I'm sure it's quite a sizable amount that they have donated to our hospital. They've also donated to many other functions internationally, and I think Hiroko will be mentioning some of that after my talk. But as we see right from the inception in 1907, when the Fujinkai was first started, the Fujinkai was very much involved with the social awareness or social welfare. And so today, one of the over the last 10 years, one of the words that have been quite prominent within Buddhism is what we call socially engaged Buddhism. But in fact, our Fujinkai has been major pioneers in social engagement. So if anybody ever tells you that, well, Jodo Shinshu hasn't been really socially engaged, they're absolutely wrong in that throughout the many decades, we have been very heavily involved. And thanks to their continued efforts, our temple has survived, thrived, and we continue. And so this annual Dana Day is not just for Fujinkai, but it is a day in which we offer offerings for social welfare. And so it is not just women, but all of our Sangha that participates in this. So I thank you all for a little bit of a different Dharma talk, but through this compassionate Bodhisattva as a figure of Dana giving, and also our Fujinkai ladies who have come together, it's very interesting when I think of these different lives and the different histories that they've had, and yet without all of that coming together, we wouldn't have the present. And so this is the whole idea of the interdependence of life through my personal history as well as Arnold's history, and when it all comes together, it comes together here at our Eastern Buddhist temple. And so out of gratitude to all the ladies, all the Fujinkai and the Dana ladies who have helped create our history, are part of our ethnic identity, our religious identity, we gather here for this service. So I'd like to close my talk with the recitation of the Nembutsu. If I can ask you, please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Well, before I pass it off to Hiroko, I should also mention just recently, within the last month, we received about 8 scrolls that were part of Arnold Petzel's personal collection. It was donated to us by an individual who was a personal friend of the Petzels, and she was gifted to these scrolls after Mrs. Petzel passed away, and she felt that the best place for these scrolls were a temple. So when it comes time where we're able to open up the temple again, we'll have a display of Arnold's personal scrolls. They're beautiful scrolls. Some of them are over 200 years old. So hangings, pictures, paintings, basically. So with that, let me just find where Hiroko is. And I will, oh, there she is, okay. So Hiroko, if I can ask you to unmute yourself. Oh, you're still muted. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Until last year, the Women's Federation directed Dana Day donations to organizations such as the Food Banks of Canada, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Global Medic, Ronald McDonald House, and Breakfast for Learning. In 2020, Women's Federation directed us to give to charities of our own choice. So we split our proceeds and gave half to the Richmond Food Bank and half to the Red Cross. This year, we are going to wait for the donations to come in, and we'll wait for directions from the Women's Federation to who to direct it to. So thank you very much. It does a lot of good.
Thank you. And then finally, I'll just bring Jeannie back. I have to find her. Where did you disappear to, Jeannie?
I'm still here.
Okay, I just want to find you on so I can pull you up on the screen.
Wave.
Oh, there you are. Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Reverend Grant. Minister's Assistant Roya Kune, Hiroko, and every one of you who have joined in on today's Dana Day service. Thank you for attending, and we hope that your week goes well and that you have fair weather, not like Texas, and that you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namanda Butsu.
Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Okay. Yeah.